Roux from the law firm Ulrich Roux and Associates, and he joins me via Skype. Now, Ulrich, good morning to you. Thanks for giving us your time. Talk to me about what the possibilities for the president are going to be moving forward. There has been lots of talk being made by or about Vusi Pikoli. Could he be the man that takes over from the NPA now?
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think we must look at the judgment as well as what Mr. Lawson said now. You know, since the inception of the NDPP and the position, there has not been one National Director of Public Prosecutions who has served his full term. The position has been plagued with scrutiny and with allegations of corruption and political influencing. So I think that the appointment of the next head of the National Prosecuting Authority must be a very well thought through process, and hopefully we can appoint someone who will rise above all scrutiny and who will serve his full term of 10 years. I think that's going to be the most important consideration. You know, someone who's objective and someone who no fingers can be pointed at, and to make sure that the National Prosecuting Authority is, you know, as the judge in the Constitutional Court pointed out, it needs to be eradicated from the rot that has plagued it over the last couple of years, and they need strong leadership in order to do that.
Lawson Naidoo, let's keep with his thoughts for a second, now that you've mentioned him. Let's talk about, because he complains that the process of appointing an NDPP is something that should not be left to the president alone. How soon do you think we could see that amendment, that the president cannot be the one or the sole person that appoints the NDPP, given that that institution has got to be seen as independent?
Yes, it all goes back to the separation of powers doctrine. And I think that today's judgment is a step towards that direction, that in future we could see that appointment by the president, that power will be taken away from the president, because the NPA's ethos and motto is to prosecute without fear and favor. Now, Jacob Zuma, during his presidency, obviously, there was a lot of allegations leveled against him. He was charged with numerous charges, and it is a difficult position where the president appoints the head of the NPA, and that person needs to decide whether the president should be prosecuted or not. So I agree with Mr. Naidoo that that appointment must be left to either Parliament or another committee who is appointed in order to appoint this head of the National Prosecuting Authority, so that if you are left with a situation where your president himself faces criminal charges, then the NPA and the head of the NPA is not the person who's going to decide whether to prosecute that president or not. So definitely a valid point being made by Mr. Naidoo, and in today's judgment, you know, a number of the orders made was the amendments to the National Prosecuting Authority Act, and I think that this could be a very realistic future for us, that these changes will be made to the Act.
Let's talk about Shaun Abrahams. Do you think he has any options available to him now?
Well, no, not in terms of our judicial court system. He has reached the pinnacle of our courts. There's no court that can overrule the Constitutional Court. So unfortunately for him, he has nowhere else to go. There's no way in which he can take this decision on review. It has, a decision has been made by the Constitutional Court, and he is bound by that. So, you know, his appointment is found to have been invalid, and unfortunately he is, so to speak, left in the political wilderness, I think, after today's judgment.
Ulrich, I was listening to an interview by the former NPA head, Mxolisi Nxasana, and he was asked the question, does he still have at least the amount of over 10 million rand in his bank account? The court wants him to pay back just over 10 million rand of the 17.3. Do you think that he, first of all, we don't know whether he still has that money in the bank, but he sounds like a person who's going to want to take this up with whoever the relevant authority is going to be. What might be his options there? I think let's just tackle that question for the time being.
Well, once again, I repeat my answer. The Constitutional Court has made a finding, and he cannot appeal that finding. He has reached the the pinnacle of our judicial system. But I do recall having heard him say, and I think that he deposed to an affidavit saying that the amount of 17.3 million rand has been placed in a trust account. He has not used it. Whether that is the truth or not, only he will know. But, you know, the amount that was paid out to him, the Constitutional Court was found was far in excess of what he should have received, even if his so to say, golden handshake was a valid one. And he has been ordered to repay 10 million rand of the 17 million rand. I don't think that he should have too much difficulty in doing that. But I think important to notice, you know, in his interview as well, is that he sought vindication and he sought to have his name cleared. And I think that his name has been cleared to an extent today. He was, as the court ruled, complicit in a certain sense with the settlement reached between him and President Jacob Zuma. But, you know, he sought to have that settlement set aside. And I think that he has been vindicated to an extent today.
Do you think he might find a sympathetic ear from the president, therefore, or is the president not likely to even look at him?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. There will be too much scrutiny if President Ramaphosa was to appoint him again. I think that the NPA, the best thing that could happen to the NPA is to turn over a new leaf and to appoint someone who has never been involved with the NPA in the past, who has no political affiliation, and who can make objective decisions without any undue influence. And again, I repeat that the National Prosecuting Authority Act states clearly that they must prosecute without fear or favor. And that means, in layman's terms, if any person, whether it's Joe Soap on the street or the president of this country, is alleged to have committed a crime, they must evaluate that allegation. And if there's a reasonable prospect of a successful prosecution, they must prosecute that person without any influence politically or otherwise. And I think that is the person that they must look for, and that is the person that they must appoint.
Ulrich, just finally, how much of a blow is this to the former president, who effectively the court says he absolutely abused his powers in order to reach his own selfish ends?
Yes, it's just another blow to him. I think all of these court cases that are now ensuing, you know, just shows the amount of wrong decisions that were made during Jacob Zuma's tenure. And the court pointed out today, it was clear that the setting aside of Mr. Nxasana was purely as a result of the fact that he was not willing to abide by Jacob Zuma's decisions, and he was not willing to be influenced by Jacob Zuma, and hence Jacob Zuma just made a decision to set him aside. And I think that it speaks volumes to the tenure of Jacob Zuma as a president, and that's why I'm saying we must eradicate all of this rot and undue influence in the NPA so that they can start afresh and start restoring the credibility of the NPA. But yes, Jacob Zuma, once again, a court, as Constitutional Court in this instance, has made a ruling against him and criticized him for the way in which he behaved during his tenure as president of this country.
Ulrich, before I let you go, I know it was the last question, but a thought just came to my mind that a person that was mentioned there, of course, he wasn't the subject per se, but it was former President Jacob Zuma's lawyer, Michael Hulley, who was involved in arranging this settlement. Might we see consequences for him, or is it simply a matter that, you know, it's water under the bridge now, is it?
No, it's water under the bridge. Remember, we as attorneys, we act on instructions, and Michael Hulley would have acted on instructions from his client, Jacob Zuma, at the time, and no fingers can be pointed at him. It was done on behalf of the president, and that's where it ends. I don't think that that will be revived at all.
All right, thank you very much for your insights. That's Ulrich Roux, who is with the law firm Ulrich and Associates, just giving us his reaction to the Constitutional Court judgment that was handed down this morning. Coming up.